Hello, everyone. Welcome to our eighth episode of Marketing to Agents. And with me, as always, I have Lalit here. Hey, Lalit.
Hey Ashwini, good to be here.
Hey, great to have you here. All right, let's perfect. So, this past week was, of course, as we all know, it was an earnings week. We had earnings from all the hyperscalers, all the Mac 7 companies, most of them at least. And we heard some great updates coming out of that. So, why don't we kick off our today's episode with Alphabet's earning first, since it will have direct implication on how and what the whole agent system is doing and what's happening on the AI search. So let would love to hear what are your thoughts on Alphabet's earnings, and then we go from there.
Yeah, so from a AU point of view, Ashwini, I think one thing which stood out in the Alphabet's earning call was that they showed very high confidence and performance numbers on the AI mode and AI overview, right? So, the AI mode has passed 1 billion monthly active users, and despite all the the whole chatter around the change in search behavior, their search revenue actually grew 17% year over year, right? So uh, it now clearly it's very clear that the AI overview and the AI mode are going to be a strong structural part of the Google's business, right? Google search business. And there were also there was also mention of that the number of clicks, right? Like Sundar Pichai clearly said that the AI searches are still sending billions of click to websites every week, right? So that to me was a standout argument, which affects all of what we think and discuss about AEO. That Google AI mode and AI overview are here to stay. They are now driving significant business for Google, and publishers have to be comfortable with the reality where, as where the Google zero term that we are all very familiar with, where Google is not sending clicks. Apparently Google is sending clicks, but not sure which categories. So this was for me the standout part from the Google's earnings. What about you?
Oh, fantastic, Lalit. Yeah, exactly. I think from a publisher point of view, this was both a welcoming news and also a question mark that if there is traffic going, then what kind of categories is the traffic going to? Because most of the time, at least we've been hearing from a number of brands across the board, a lot of our users at Airpulse have been reporting that there is definitely a shift in organic traffic, and it has not been completely compensated, of course, by the AI traffic which is coming from Google. So definitely there is a drop, but then how does that drop compensate with the increase coming from what you exactly mentioned, what Sundar Pichai said? Now the important point is, if Google is showing an increase in search revenue, then does that mean it is because of increase in the number of clicks which is happening, or Google has categorically increased the costing or the price per click as well? So I heard about something interesting, and I have still not completely validated it myself. So as you would know, for the longest period of time, for almost last 15 years since Google, PPC or pay per click model had launched, Google's click was always priced at the second best price of a click. So for example, for a click, if you bid $5 for the click, and I am the second bidder and I bid only $2 for the click, then Lalit, if you won that click, you will only pay $2.01 for that click. You won't pay $5 for the click. That was Google's model for the last 15 years. But quietly, early this year, Google has changed that model now, and now you will be paying $5 for that click. And I'll be paying, if I win the click or I win the second click, I'll be paying $2 for that click. So now, so some of these micro things have started changing about Google, which of course are not going to be talked about in the earnings call, but some of these things are happening. So again, like I said, I have not really validated yet. We haven't been running huge budgets on PPC, but we've been hearing this in the market that some of these changes are affecting. So when Sundar Pichai is mentioning that there is increase in the search revenue, I'm not sure how much of that jump is coming just from a click volume increase versus increase in the costing, increase in more inventory, adding more number of links. Organic for sure has gone significantly lower. So again, mixed response. I think there's still more data which needs to be understood to be able to come to a conclusion on where this finally lands.
Yeah, this could be very well the driver of the year on year revenue growth, because from all our usage patterns and what we, let's say, keep on discussing in the community, I think nobody's clicking, and which means, like, a significant portion of people are not clicking, and maybe whoever is clicking, they are probably costing the advertiser a lot more than earlier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just one more a quick data point around this fact is, so if you look at what the change which Google made in May, which is now in Search Console, they're also showing impressions on AI searches. So your brand impressions or your page citations on any AI overviews or AI searches which is happening on Google. So that's a great way for Google to say, hey, your brand is still getting visibility or your links are still getting some visibility on Google. But of course, that impression volume is minuscule as compared to the search volume impressions that we get today. And that's true for all the brands, right? So the search volume impressions that any brand gets today is huge, and the AI impressions volume, that is, the difference is very, very significant there. Number one. And number two is now very interesting point, which is where these impressions of AI overviews, that's great that those impressions are there. But when you go into your analytics and track, okay, how much traffic did those impressions generate or how much jump in brand queries you saw, that of course is a way, way, way narrower funnel now. Now that, so a impression, so if an impression earlier on a good position meant certain amount of clicks, that funnel has shrunk significantly, has narrowed significantly with AI overviews. So yeah. Yeah, so that's, I think, some of the things that we're learning now as Google is launching their, Google is making, like you said, I think that we're going to be seeing more often now. Google's AI mode and AI search is going to be combined, and we'll see that a lot more. But yeah, I think the traffic numbers will still be aggressively monitored.
Yeah, but
That's
Ashwani,
fine.
like, just from a user point of view, uh, do you think the click that happens in an AI answer, is that actually worth more for the advertiser? Because from our, let's say, past discussions as well, and from what we see in the community, that the visitor that comes from the AI search is actually 4 times more likely to buy, right? they they
100%.
are they are well researched, right? So in some sense, I think if a click happens there, right, it may be justified to charge more for that.
100%. I think that's a great point. And there is data which is actually saying that is true. That anyone who's already done their research on AI and then they're visiting a website, there's a much higher propensity for them to complete the transaction. So you're right. Actually, the it makes sense to charge higher for a user who's done their research and then coming to a platform. But yeah,
Yeah,
does that? Yeah.
and what we are seeing as a user behavior today is that people are spending a lot of time on the research on the AI mode, or AI mode on Google or any other chat engine, sorry, AI engine, and then they would then either they would click something which was linked in the answer, or they would open a new tab, then search for a specific brand, right? Now the whole behavior of, let's say, opening up a new tab is in itself frictionful, right?
Right.
So as long as the link is available, or whether it's a sponsored link or like a paid link or an organic link uh, on the AI answer, that is bound to be the chosen behavior people would click. In fact, just yesterday I was researching about something on Amazon. No, in fact, I started my research on ChatGPT, and then the product listings which came out, they were all direct links to Amazon. And I actually did not open up a new tab because it's again frictionful to search on Amazon, right? Why would I, as a user, I would directly just single click and land on the product listing page, right? So uh, I was a high intent customer then, right? And I ended up buying that. So I would say, that the click that happens, right, it's worth more for sure. So charging more is not unjustified in some sense, uh, because in the previous era of search, I think people would then, like, you spend more time, and there's obviously there was a there was a big money loss in terms of people clicking on your paid ads and not even coming to the page. Because if you remember, in our previous startup, we had this user pattern that we would obviously see in analytics, that clicks are happening on the Google ad, but then the page views are actually much, like, the time spent is much uh, longer on the page, landing page, and there's no activity, which means that in the exploration phase, people actually clicked on all the links that were listed, right, in separate tabs, and they probably did not spend enough time on all the tabs. So that click actually costed the advertiser, but then the user never went to it. So there was also a lot of sort of money leakage from the advertiser point of view happening in the previous search era also, right? Where if you look at the eventual funnel conversion also, right? The the website click to conversion was always something that we were always focusing on improving. Then once you get the lead, then there's a good amount of effort on converting that lead to a potential pipeline, and then finally conversion, right? So overall conversion for, let's say, if I take a general assumption across all categories, B2B, B2C, I think it was some roughly under 2 to 3% only, right? From, let's say, an ad click to a customer, right? So if the AI experience is somewhere taking away all the user anxiety and information needs and landing you a high intent customer, I think that click is worth a lot more. So it may appear as a practice which probably is different from earlier, but I think is principally justified.
So lesser clicks but higher revenue per click. That's how maybe that the math works for
Yeah,
Google in that sense.
exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just building on top of your Amazon anecdote, Amazon also reported their earnings today, and apparently their ads revenue is has jumped significantly as well. So I think, although although I think our hypothesis is that slowly discovery will move out of Amazon, because if the discovery happens through LLMs and then the final purchase happens on Amazon, then yes, but then I think still the dominant behavior today is still discovery also happens on Amazon. But yeah,
Yeah.
that could be something we should change.
Yeah. So ad revenue also increases when the pool of advertisers increase, right? And for all these listing websites, like marketplaces which list products, I think it is the volume of sellers is so high there that you have to be an advertiser to be even visible. So these are sort of some natural trends which would anyway result in, let's say, increase in ad revenue, but I would say these are all transient things. The eventual user experience, right, which will be more stable user experience in the AI era, would be where it will mostly transaction based. Yeah, and only few surface areas like Google, they would end up making revenue on advertisement, but all these marketplaces might still just make money on transaction.
Agreed. Agreed.
Because
Yeah,
if
and
I'm an
let
ad, right, if let's say, because if I'm a brand, right, I will have two choices. Either I spend for my visibility on Amazon, or I spend on my visibility on, let's say, ChatGPT or Google, right? And spending money on ChatGPT and Google would be much more profitable for the brands, because they might actually land the visitor directly to their Shopify store, right? As opposed to an Amazon, where even if the click happens, uh, you're still landed in a category page, or even on your product listing page, your competition is listed, right? So as, let's say, overall commerce matures, I think Amazon is like not well positioned to sort of improve their e-commerce revenue, and that is why I think we discussed earlier also, right? That's why they are opening up their logistics arm, right? Their whole supply chain as a service, so that if you look at how the e-commerce logistics and supply chain matured in India as a market because of the whole third-party revolution, where third-party logistic players make it now super easy for brands to just get their product shipped to users, and without worrying too much about anything. I think the same doesn't exist in the US, right? So the world-class supply chain that Amazon has built is now they're now offering it as a API, right, to individual sellers who have a Shopify store. That would be that itself reflects like their own understanding of where the puck is moving, right? So for them to continue to play a significant role in the overall e-commerce economy, they would have to bear that shift, and probably they would be big, let's say they would gain a lot by being the preferred choice for sellers when it comes to, let's say, the logistics and supply chain.
That's an interesting angle, that if actually, yeah. So another data coming out and that may be relevant to this discussion is that Etsy also reported their earnings, and they specifically pointed out jump in their revenue and their transaction volume because of AI agentic commerce. So apparently there is, so like you just took an example where there were actual listing pages, Amazon listing pages in your response from the GPT. Now imagine that if you were also uh, okay with getting the agent to purchase the right product. Let's say you chose that and you just get the commerce done as well. So I think we are seeing that some of those early signs also happening where agents are going ahead and participating in the commerce as well, and could be interesting to see now how does the platform enable that or not. How does a platform like Etsy or Shopify or Amazon for that matter, how does that enable that layer of agentic commerce too?
Yeah, so over there, I think the adoption of UCP, which is the Universal Commerce Platform, protocol, Universal Commerce Protocol, I think that has seen significant adoption, right? And the UCP consortium is now much bigger and also includes other categories like travel, right? And I won't be surprised if like tomorrow edtech also becomes part of it, where someone is, let's say, researching a course and then they end up buying, let's say, a boot camp over on the internet through an agent, right? So I think that is seeing good adoption, and Shopify is leading the charge there. Almost all Shopify stores come the UCP is enabled by default. And Etsy, right? The thing about Etsy is that they just happen to have made their catalog accessible to agents, right? They were probably late in the game, but then this basic optimization that led to a like roughly 6% increase, right, in in traffic and discovery of products. And if you look at like a normal a consumer who enters the world of the web, right? So they are not aware of all these brands, right? They're not aware whether an Etsy exists. They're not aware whether, let's say, another marketplace exists. They are aware about their life and their needs, right? And in the AI paradigm, this natural companion that we'll end up nurturing, which is the chat GPT or any other AI assistant, right? They are extremely tireless, right? They can browse 2000 websites and find what you need in your life, right? So they, as a user, I don't have to know whether so and so marketplace exists or not, right? So I just have to express my need to my AI assistant, and then they will surface the products that sort of fulfill my need, right? So I would say it's a great, let's say, era that we are entering, especially for individual sellers. It disaggregates a lot of value, right, which was captured in, let's say, aggregation platforms, and it would actually also help nurture a lot of niches, right, where those niches don't exist because there's no demand to capture. There's no way to capture the demand, right? Or they don't even know whether demand exists or not, right? So niches would actually flourish a lot more, right, in this AI way of discovering products and services.
Agree, Lil, rightly said. Moving on to our next item from next item in the docket. So there was a again we are frequently now seeing studies coming out regarding AI search and what's happening on AI search. So we had this new study come out this week. A couple of interesting findings from there. So first of all, uh, looks like, and what this study covers is, I think it covers most likely e-commerce categories, but it says that for 85% of categories, there isn't a clear AI visibility leader right now. So there aren't fixed brands which are getting listed on all different LLMs or AI searches. So that means there are no clear winners still for 85% of categories. And the second interesting takeaway from that research or the report was that the brand search queries. So, for example, for AirMeet or Airpulse, it's if there are brand search query volume that can be tracked on Google Analytics directly, if that is showing an increase, that is a great indicator for proxy for how good your AI search or AI visibility is. So interestingly, that seems to have a great correlation with that. So this again, we've been hearing AI searches increasing, and certain categories are getting dominated by a few players. But at the same time, there seems to be a large number of categories which are still open. And again, citation links, we know which are the usual websites which get quoted in citations on those links as well. So, a mixed bag of research findings from this report. Any thoughts on this level?
Yeah, I think this was actually some sort of an eye opener, right? That at a very large scale, I think on the long tail of categories, people, what you're getting in results in AI answers is still very probabilistic, right? So the the recurrent nature of a brand being cited as a leader or as a top recommendation, that is not there, right? So you pick any category, you search for in your AI answer, like in some, like there is a percentage of answers that would recommend, let's say, a certain brand on as a top recommendation, right? And then another percentage would be where the other brand is recommended as as the top option. So what this tells us is that these are obviously probabilistic systems that we are dealing with. What it also tells us that the mechanism with which they determine what is right in terms of their recommendation, right, their recommendation logic per se, right, that uh, obviously relies on their own training as well as data that is accessed during the inference time, right? Yeah. So what I was saying is that it's largely probabilistic systems, and the corpus of data which sort of determines or helps the AI model pick a leader amongst the options, right? That corpus is also not pointing to a consensus, right?
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for brands to sort of switch gears in terms of publishing content, which sort of validates their position as a market leader, and or whatever is their market positioning, right? It's a great opportunity that the window is still wide open, that brands can double down on content creation in obviously in a guided manner. Like if if they are an Airpulse customer, Airpulse actually has a data driven recommendation on which publishers are getting more preference, and then work with those publishers to get the right content out. And also Airpulse highlights the content gaps, which from the point of view of your desired positioning, right? If let's say you're trying to optimize for certain prompts, which which would only work if the AI systems understands you in a certain light. So which means that there are some content gaps if you're not being cited or if you're not being mentioned. Then Airpulse also highlights, and Airpulse and a few other platforms also highlight the content gaps. The good thing about Airpulse is that we not just highlight the gaps, we also help you ship content to fill the gaps. So the space is still wide open for people to claim leadership. So that's the key takeaway here.
Exactly, Lilith. And given that there are brands which have started investing in it, I this window, of course, is a very time bound window. So I think taking action on, and again going by what we've learned in the SEO era, it takes a while to get you to the top of the results. But at the same time, with AI, that action might be sooner. But again, it still needs a lot of effort from each brand to get listed, get mentioned on the AI answers. Perfect. And then just coming back to the second aspect, where while there are brand mentions and while there is very hard way to know how many and in how many queries you're getting mentioned, unless of course there are set of prompts that as a business, as a brand, I can track. But then what about everything else? Where am I getting mentions? What kind of pages am I getting mentions on? Now, none of the LLMs, other than Google, of course, is sharing that data with us today, with a brand today. So, one of the things which has come up in these studies is that a good proxy is to just track your brand search volume. So if you're seeing more and more increases in your brand searches, again, either through your Google Search Console or through your analytics, if you're seeing more organic traffic, more traffic coming from your brand searches, that could be a good proxy to see how your AI visibility is doing. But again, very rudimentary way, very while there are great platforms which provide you very good visibility on specific prompts, I think it's great to use platforms like Airpulse to get that visibility clear and not leave that hanging or not leave that open for uh, interpretation with brand queries. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think over there, I think my takeaway is that we were always looking for a ground truth metric, right? Because the visibility platforms, especially the visibility monitoring platforms, they are basically looking at simulated user queries, and uh, the the actual search queries data is not visible to us because the search surface area is also very fragmented today, right? People in my circle are not even going to ChatGPT. They're basically relying on their Hermes agent, right? And which uses some search tool, which uses some index provider. So extremely fragmented as we go forward. So what is working, what's not working across all these engines is hard to know for brands, right? So the what this study reveals is that it probably is highlighting a usage pattern. The usage pattern is that when the AI ends up recommending a certain uh, vendor option or a brand to the user, you know, at the end of their research time spent on AI, the natural next step for the user is to basically, search for the brand website or do a branded query on the on the next tab, or maybe go further down, right, in the AI queries, in the AI session itself. And as we know that every user prompt is then split into fan out prompts, right? So if a user is going deep into a certain brand's information, right, and by just asking more about a certain brand, for example, for Airmeet, right? Like if a prospect is asking more about Airmeet, let's say Airmeet reviews, Airmeet versus Zoom, then the platforms would, the AI agents would invariably split that into fan out queries, right? And those fan out queries would have a brand search, brand keyword in that, right? So that was obviously like an implicit correlation, but now I think what has come out is that there is a more north of 50% correlation, that if you see increase in your brand search query volume in your own, let's say, Google Search Console, or let's say your own search logs, you can very confidently then assume that your AI visibility is also increasing on the site.
Perfectly, Lith. Yep, I think you put it very accurately. So I think again, both of these points do make a strong case for platforms like AirPulse to be able to help monitor, track, of course, track your visibility, AI visibility, understand where the gaps are, and then of course help you act on those gaps as well. Prepare right kind of content, get your website in the right, in the right structure, technically ensuring everything is right to get the site be quoted more and your brand quoted more in AI searches. Perfect. Like, I think that was it for our this week's episode. We did cover, of course, we will hear a lot more. earnings calls this week, which have happened, which is Microsoft, Meta, and again next week as well. But yeah, we'll keep bringing more and latest news back into this podcast. And thank you everyone for listening to this episode. Do share your feedback with us. And we'll see you again next week with another episode of Marketing to Agents. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashwini. Goodbye,
Thanks a lot.
everyone.
Bye.